On the first day, it came through the east loading duct. I know that because I was the one who logged it. Depot supply coordinator, third rotation, civilian contract. My job before everything changed was to track inbound cargo manifests and flag discrepancies. That morning, I was 2 crates short on medical polymer sheeting, and I was composing a terse note to the transit authority when the perimeter alarm went off. Not the breach alarm, the organism alarm, the one they'd installed 6 weeks earlier, and that nobody expected to use. We sealed the building in 4 minutes. That's what the drills gave us. 4 minutes from first signal to full lockdown. I remember thinking we'd done well as I dogged the last interior hatch. I remember thinking it wouldn't last more than a day. That was 71 hours ago. The Velma, that's what the science team called them before the science team lost contact, are not predators. That distinction matters, though it took me 2 days to understand why. They don't eat. They don't hunt in any sense I recognize. What they do is read. Every surface they touch, they are sampling, drawing biological and chemical data through a network of filament-thin tendrils, passing it back through the colony, cataloging it. The xenobiologist had a word for the process. I've forgotten it. What I haven't forgotten is watching the organism work its way through the east duct on the security feed. Slow, methodical, pale, threading through every gap in the polymer seal, like it had all the time available to anything that had ever lived. The east duct in 40 minutes, the north vent in 6 hours. By end of day 1, it had sampled every surface in the loading bay and was pressing against the inner doors. There are 19 of us. There were 22. 3 were outside when the alarm went. And we made a decision not to open the seals for them. That decision was made by the senior logistics officer, a man named Pren, sitting in the break room, eating the last of someone else's field rations, and not making eye contact with anyone. I don't judge him. I might have made the same call. I don't know. I was at the hatch with my hand on the dog lever when he said don't, and I didn't, and here we are. By day 2, the organism had worked through 3 of the 6 interior seals. Not by force. There's no force involved, no pressure, no chemical erosion we could measure. It simply found the molecular gaps that exist in any manufactured seal and passed through them. Our polymer is rated to stop particulate down to 4 microns. The Velma filaments are thinner than that. They are thinner than almost anything we make. And what they cannot pass through, they wait beside. We had one section of the building that held. Wall 4. Wall 4 is the long interior face of the storage hall, the one that runs parallel to the east loading dock. It's a poured composite panel, no different from any other wall in the building. There are shelving brackets along most of its length. Lighting conduit runs overhead. About 2/3 of the way along, at roughly 1.5 meters from the floor, there is a child's handprint. It's painted on, red paint, the kind they use for facility signage. Someone, one of the depot families, I assumed, had dipped a child's hand in the paint during the spring open day and pressed it flat against the wall. These things happen. Maintenance probably scheduled it for removal, and then didn't get to it. It's been there since April. I've walked past it 100 times without thinking about it. I noticed it on day 3 because the Velma organism stopped there. Not slowed, stopped. The filament network had been advancing along wall 4 at roughly a hand's width per hour. I'd been marking its progress with a grease pencil on the opposite wall, a habit left over from the manifests. At 0600 on day 3, the advance halted at approximately 40 centimeters from the handprint. By 0900, it had not moved. By noon, I was certain enough to pull everyone back from that section and watch. At 1420, a single tendril extended from the mass and touched the outer edge of the handprint. It stayed there for 11 hours. I've tried to describe what 11 hours of watching a single pale filament rest motionless against a child's painted hand looks like. I'm not sure I can do it justice. The rest of the organism continued sampling, continued pressing at the remaining interior seals, continued its slow and patient cataloging of everything we'd built and sealed and bolted down. But that one tendril didn't move. It rested at the edge of a faded red handprint left by a child who was probably at home right now, probably wondering why the depot wasn't answering comms. What the organism was reading, I think. And I want to be careful here, because I am a supply coordinator and not a xenobiologist. is what was left in the paint. A child's hand carries more biological information than almost any other surface a human being touches with. Skin oils, epithelial cells, trace proteins, the particular chemical signature of a juvenile immune system, still calibrating itself against a world it hasn't finished learning. Paint had preserved some of it. Not much. But the Velma read at a resolution we don't have instruments to match. And what they found in that palm-sized smear of red pigment was something they had no existing record for. Not a threat, not a resource, not a tool user engaged in territorial behavior, which is apparently what they'd been cataloging in everywhere else in the building. Something that had simply been here, small and curious, and pressed its hand flat against a wall to leave a mark. At 0100 on day 4, Tendril withdrew. By 0300, the organism had pulled back from every interior seal it had breached. Not all the way. It was still present in the loading bay, still present in the east duct. But the inner doors were clear. See it on the security feed, the pale network contracting, reorganizing, leaving a clear perimeter around the storage hall. Around wall 4. I thought about it for 2 hours. Then I went to the supply cabinet and found a container of red facility paint. Took me 20 minutes to get the lid off because my hands were shaking, and I'm not going to pretend otherwise. I stood in front of wall 4. The child's handprint was at roughly my chest height. Small, a child maybe 5 or 6 years old, fingers spread wide. The kind of print that's all palm and very little wrist, because the hand is still mostly hand. I looked at it for a while. Then I dipped my right hand in the paint, pressed it flat against the wall directly beside it, and held it there. I counted to 10. I don't know why. It seemed like the right thing to do. My handprint is bigger, the fingers are longer, the lines across the palm are deeper. The whole shape reads differently even to a human eye, but it's the same gesture. The same flat open spread of fingers, the same deliberate contact with a surface for no tactical reason, no territorial reason, no reason a cataloging intelligence would be able to classify as threat or resource or boundary marking behavior. I stepped back and waited. The organism was still on the security feed, still present in the loading dock, the east duct, the north vent, but it wasn't moving. At 0700, the first tendril came back to wall 4. It spent 4 hours sampling both prints, mine and the child's, adult and juvenile, side by side in red paint on a composite wall. At 1100 it withdrew again. At 1430, Velma colony delegate, if that's the right word, the xenobiologists used it, and I'm using it now because I don't have a better one, extended a single tendril through the east loading duct and stopped at the interior threshold without crossing it. It stayed there. It didn't advance. Pren wanted to seal the hatch. I told him to leave it. We're still here. The organism is still in the loading dock. But the siege perimeter has not moved in 31 hours. And this morning, I found that the east duct seal had been partially reclosed from the outside. Not completely. Not enough to lock, but enough that I can feel the pressure differential when I put my hand near it. I've been composing a message to the transit authority, not about the missing polymer sheeting, about what a paint-smeared child's handprint on an interior wall turns out to mean to a colonial intelligence that has sampled every manufactured surface on this continent and found nothing it couldn't classify. Nothing except that. I don't know what comes next. I know that somewhere in the Velma colony network, in whatever structure they use to hold information about what they've encountered and what it means, there is now a record of this depot. 2 human handprints on wall 4, one small and one large, pressed flat and open against a surface for no reason that registers as aggression. I think that record is the reason we're still alive. I think, whatever the organism read in that child's hand, it found us worth keeping.